Hey guys, it's good to see you again today. Sorry it's a little bit darker, having to get an early start this morning. I'm having to go move my daughter out of her college dorm room because their school has been canceled also. So I had to get an early start this morning, but it's so good to see you. Let's go over quickly. I hope you were able to figure out the words from yesterday. Our first word was hollow, and it says in the book that the men were sent to hollow out the log in the cove. So hollow is a word that can describe that something is empty, but it also can be a verb, something that you do. If you hollow out the log, it means you take the inside of the log out. So it's empty inside. Very good. Our next word was ceased. And in the book it said, but the cries suddenly ceased as my father shook his head and turned his back on the chest. So you remember the women were excited about the jewelry they saw and they were all, woo! And then all of a sudden her dad was like, and it ceased. It means it stopped. All their excitement stopped. Very good. And then our last word in chapter 5 was ample. And it said, since there was already ample food to last through the winter, it no longer mattered who hunted. Okay, so your clue there would be they really didn't need to hunt because they had ample food. So if you don't need to hunt, that must mean you have enough food to last for everyone. So ample means enough. All right, excellent job. Well, we're going to continue today. We're just going to read 2 chapters today, and I have 2 words for you. Fastened and anchored. Okay, and both of these words can be a little tricky because you have familiar words in there. Okay, so listen closely today and see what these words mean. All right, so yesterday, if you remember, they ended up kind of getting in a battle with the Aleuts as the Aleuts were trying to leave, and the people of Galasat did not think they were paying them what they should have. So there was a little battle there, and many people died, including her father. All right. And then you remember they went into the winter and they kind of sat around and thought about those people. And then when spring came, they began to do different jobs. And remember, the women started doing a lot of the work, but the men didn't like that. All right. So it says, so they began to change their duties. So let's see what happens. They got a new chief, and the chief was going to look for a new land that they could live in, so there wouldn't be quite as much sadness around. After Kimki had been gone 1 moon, we began to watch for his return. Every day someone went to the cliff to scan the sea. Even on stormy days we went, and on days when fog shrouded the island. During the day, there was always a watcher on the cliff, and each night as we sat around our fires, we wondered if the next sun would bring him home. But the spring came and left, and the sea was empty. Kimki did not return. There were few storms that winter, and rain was light and ended early. This meant that we would need to be careful of water. In the old days, the spring sometimes ran low, and no one worried. But now everything seemed to cause alarm. Many were afraid that we would die of thirst. There are other things more important to ponder, said Mattasep, who had taken Kimki's place. Mattasep meant the Aleuts, for it was now the time of year when they had come before. Watchers on the cliff began to look for the red sails, and a meeting was held to plan what to do if the Aleuts came. We lacked the men to keep them from landing or to save our lives if they attacked us, which we were certain they would. Plans were therefore made to flee as soon as their ship was sighted. Food and water were stored in canoes, and these were hidden on the rocks at the south end of the island. The cliffs were steep here and very high. But we wove a stout rope of bull kelp and fastened it to rocks at the top of the cliff so that it hung to the water. As soon as the Aleut ship was sighted, we would all go to the cliff and let ourselves down on one at a time. We would then leave in our canoes for the island of Santa Catalina. Although the entrance of the Coral Cove was too narrow for a ship to pass through safely at night, men were sent there to watch the cove from dusk to dawn, besides those who watched during the day. Shortly afterwards, on a night of fine moon, one of the men came running back to the village. Everyone was asleep, but his cries quickly awakened us. "The Aleuts!" he shouted. "The Aleuts!" It was news we expected. We were prepared for it, yet there was so much fear in the village of Galasat. Massep strode from hut to hut, telling everyone be calm and not to lose time packing things that would not be needed. I took my skirt of yucca fiber, however, for I had spent many days making it, and it was very pretty, and also my otter cape. Quietly, we filed out of the village along the trail that led toward the place where our canoes were hidden. The moon was growing pale, and there was a faint light in the east, but a strong wind began to blow. We had gone no further than half a league when we were overtaken by the man who had given the warning. He spoke at Matasape, but we all gathered around to listen to him. "I went back to the cove after I gave the alarm," he said. "When I got there, I could see the ship clearly. It is beyond the rocks that guard the harbor. It is a smaller ship than the one which belonged to the Aleuts. The sails are white instead of red." "Could you see anyone?" Matasape asked. "No." "It is not the same ship which was here last spring?" "No." Matasape was silent, pondering the news. Then he told us to go on to where the canoes were and wait for him, for he was going back. It was light now, and we went quickly over the dunes to the edge of the cliff and stood there while the sun rose. It's not the same ship as the Aleuts. I wonder who this could be. The wind grew cold, but fearing that those on the ship would see the smoke, we did not start a fire, though we had meal to cook for breakfast. Instead, we ate a small quantity of dried abalone, and afterwards my brother Ramo climbed over the cliff. No one had been down to the rocks since the canoes were hidden, so we did not know whether they were still safe or not. While he was gone, we saw a man running across the dunes. It was Nanko, carrying a message from Matasape. He was sweating in spite of the cold, and he stood trying to catch his breath. We all waited, urging him to talk. But his face was happy, and we knew that he brought good news. "Speak," everyone said in a chorus. "I've been running for more than a league," he said. "I cannot talk." "You're talking," someone said. "Speak, Nanko, speak," cried many voices. Nanko was having fun with us. He threw out his chest and took a deep breath. He looked around at the circle of faces as if he did not understand why everyone was staring at him. "The ship," he said at last, saying the word slowly, "does not belong to our enemies, the Aleut. There are white men on this ship, and they have come from that place where Kimki went. He left for our island." "Has Kimki returned?" an old man broke in. "No, but it is he who saw the white man and told them to come here." "What do they look like?" Ulep asked. "Are there boys on the ship?" asked Ramo, who had come back with his mouth full of something. Everyone seemed to be talking at once. Nanko made his face stern, which was hard for him to do because his mouth had been cut in the battle with the Aleuts, and ever since it had always seemed to smile. He held up his hand for silence. "The ship has come for one reason," he said, "to take us away from Galasat." "To what place?" I asked. It was good news that the ship did not belong to the Aleuts, but where would the white men take us? "I do not know to what place," he said. "Kimki knows, and he has asked the white men to take us there." Saying no more, Nanko turned back, and we followed him. We were fearful of where we were going, yet we were happy too. So they're going to a new place to live where they feel like they'll be safe and happy. Wonder how this is going to work out. We took nothing with us when we thought we would have to flee, so there was so much excitement as we packed our baskets. Nanko strode up and down outside the houses, urging us to hurry. "The wind grows strong," he shouted. "The ship will leave you." I filled 2 baskets with the things I wished to take, 3 fine needles of whalebone, and awl for making holes, and a good stone knife for scraping hides, 2 cooking pots, and a small box made from a shell with many earrings in it. Eulape had 2 boxes of earrings, for she was veneer than I. And when she put them into her baskets, she drew a thin mark with blue clay across. She was vainer than I, sorry. And when she put them into her basket, she drew a thin mark with blue clay across her nose and cheekbones. The mark meant that she was unmarried. She must be looking for a husband. The ship leaves, shouted Nanko. If it goes, Eulape shouted back, it will come again after the storm. My sister was in love with Nanko, but she laughed at him. Other men will come to the island, she said. They will be far more handsome and brave than those who leave. You are all women of such ugliness that they will be afraid and soon go away. The wind blew in fierce gusts as we left the village, stinging our faces with sand. Ramo hopped along far in front with one of our baskets. But before long, he ran back to say that he had forgotten his fishing spear. Nanko was standing on the cliff motioning us to hurry. I refused to let him go back for it. The ship was anchored outside the cove, and Nanko said that it could not come closer to the shore because of the high waves. They were beating across the rocks with the sound of thunder. The shore, as far as I could see, was rimmed with foam. 2 boats were pulled up on the beach. Beside them stood 4 white men, and as we came down the trail, one of the men beckoned us to walk faster. He spoke to us in a language which we could not understand. The men of our tribe, except Nanko and Chief Matasape, were already on the ship. My brother Ramo was there too, Nanko said. He had run on ahead after I had told him that he could not go back to the village for his spear. Nanko said that he had jumped into the first boat that left the cove. Matasape divided the women into 2 groups. Then the boats were pushed into the water, and while they bobbed about, we scrambled into them as best we could. The cove was partly sheltered from the wind, but as soon as we went through the passage between the rocks and into the sea, great waves struck us. There was such confusion. Spray flew. The white men shouted at each other. The boat pitched so wildly that in one breath you could see the ship, and in the next breath it had gone. Yet we came to it at last, and somehow were able to climb onto the deck. The ship was large, many times the size of our biggest canoes. It had 2 tall masts, and between them stood a young man with blue eyes and a black beard. He was the chieftain of the white man, for he began to shout orders which they quickly obeyed. Sails rose to the tall mast, and 2 of the men began to pull on the rope that held the anchor. I called to my brother, knowing that he was very curious and therefore would be in the way of the men who were working. The wind drowned my voice, and he did not answer. The deck was so crowded that it was hard to move, but I went from one end of it to the other, calling his name. Still, there was no answer. No one had seen him. At last I found Nanko. I was overcome with fear. "Where is my brother?" I cried. He repeated what he had told me on the beach, but as he spoke, Eulape, who stood beside him, pointed toward the island. I looked out across the deck and the sea. There, running along the cliff, the fishing spear held over his head, was Ramo. He had missed the boat. The sails had filled, and the ship was now moving slowly away. Everyone was looking toward the cliff, even the white man. I ran to one of them and pointed, but he shook his head and turned from me. The ship began to move faster. Against my will, I screamed. Chief Matasape grasped my arm. "We cannot wait for Ramo," he said. "If we do, the ship will be driven on the rocks." "We must," I shouted. "We must." "The ship will come back for him on another day," Matasape said. "He will be safe. There's food for him to eat and water to drink and places to sleep." "No!" I cried. Matasape's face was like stone. He was not listening. I cried out once more, but my voice was lost in the howling wind. People gathered around me, saying again what Matasape had said, yet I was not comforted by their words. Ramo had disappeared from the cliff, and I knew that he was now running along the trail that led to the beach. The ship began to circle the kelp bed, and I thought surely that it was going to return to shore. I held my breath waiting. Then slowly its direction changed. It pointed toward the east. At that moment I walked across the deck, and though many hands tried to hold me back, flung myself into the sea. A wave passed over my head, and I went down and down until I thought I would never behold the day again. The ship was far away when I rose. Only the sails showed through the spray. I was still clutching the basket that held all of my things, but it was very heavy, and I realized that I could not swim with it in my arms. Letting it sink, I started off toward the shore. I could barely see the 2 rocks that guarded the entrance to the Coral Cove, but I was not fearful. Many times I had swam further than this, although not in a storm. I kept thinking over and over as I swam how I would punish Ramo when I reached the shore. Yet, when I felt the sand under my feet and saw him standing at the edge of the waves, holding his fishing spear and looking so forlorn, I forgot all those things I planned to do. Instead, I fell to my knees and put my arms around him. The ship had disappeared. "When will it come back?" Ramo asked. There were tears in his eyes. "Soon," I said. The only thing that made me angry was that my beautiful skirt of yucca fibers, which I had worked on so long and carefully, was ruined. All right, we're going to stop there for today. So everyone from Galasat is now gone and on the ship, all right, except for her and her brother. So 12 and 6 maybe, or maybe they're 13 and 7 now, are left on an island all alone. All right, I want you to work today with these words, fastened and anchored, okay? And work to find out what those mean. You could even listen back to where you heard them in the story, and then try to make 2 sentences of your own. All right, guys, it's been nice reading with you again this morning. Please make sure your parents are checking their Remind. I'm going to be sending out new information in the days to come, and hopefully we'll be able to connect on the computer too and be learning together during this time. So hope you have a great day. Bye.